Power of She is USISPF's newest podcast series where we showcase the brilliance of women professionals across an eclectic mix of industry and amplify the voices of inspiring women in leadership, riveting dialogues, and candid conversations to uncover her story. We intend to go beyond the boardroom and perhaps to the virtual drawing room where we can have intimate, heartfelt conversation focused on getting to know the person beyond the persona. My guest today, the very special and the very inimitable Ranju Alex, Area Vice President, South Asia, Marriott International. Ranju, thank you so much for making the time. This is a different sort of check-in with Marriott.
Thank you so much for calling me on the show. I'm so honored, so pleased, so excited, and so nervous.
No, well, we've got to put that to ease, right? Because normally it's always you welcoming all your wonderful clientele at the wonderful Marriott chain. So it's a pleasure to welcome you this time. I want to, always say on the show, like we do the Julie Andrews thing, we start at the beginning, a very good place to start. So I wanted to go back to your earliest years, your formative years, because you grew up at a time when India was a different country. So as a result of which, your parents and the society around you were very different people as well. How would you describe your formative years growing up, especially at a time when the employment rate being men to women was just far too stark?
True. I'll take you back to the place that I belong to. I belong to a state called Bihar in India, which in those days and even today to a large degree is very patriarchal by nature. Thankfully for me, my parents were extremely progressive in their way of thinking. We are two sisters and one brother, and in our family, in our household, there was never any discrimination between the girls and the boys. So I grew up in a very happy household, but I never really um, uh, came out of the fact that the community around me continued to be very patriarchal and biased towards the male child always. So it was an odd situation to be in because I saw a different world inside the house, and then I saw a different world outside. I was educated in a convent school, so I got very good values both at home, as well as in the school. As a teenager, I didn't really have any aspirations, so to speak, or dreams. My only dream was to marry a Bollywood star, a particular Bollywood star. I was a great fan, wanted to have his babies. How would I meet him? I don't know. It would be, oh, he will spot me in a crowd and we'll walk into sunset kind of a story. That's the only aspiration I had. Well, God had other plans. And when I was 18, I was struck with a neurological disorder called neurocysticercosis. It was very, very new in India during those days. I was in the 12th standard, which resulted in six cyst like tumors in the brain and several of them in my body. And the doctors gave my parents 6 months for me to survive. And they said, you can call all your family and everybody, and we don't see her surviving beyond 6 months because all her organs are going to shut down and she'll get several of these cysts all over the body. So I was in hospital, in and out of hospitals for almost 2.5 years, a long time for an 18-year-old girl. But the good thing is, thanks to the doctors, the new technology and medicines that they got into India, because my case was a case study for India, I did survive it. However, I came out with serious negative effects on both my body and my brain. So I was, for example, I was all of 105 kilos because of all the steroids that had been pumped in, and then my memory was completely lost of the previous years. Thanks to the love and the care shown by my parents, my siblings, and the community in general, I did come out of it. So when I came out of it, I realized there was one particular day where the doctors had given me 24 hours, and I knew that it could be a make or break day. And that is the day I had sent a silent prayer to God saying, please let me live and I will do something, and I'll make something out of my life. And the first thing I said, I'll listen to my parents and I'll study more. God, please let me live, because that's one thing I had not been doing as a kid. And I lived it through. So I decided to take life in my own hands And that was the first time I said I wanted to get into hotels. It happened by chance. The community that I belonged to, one, women did not work so much. And if they worked, then hotels was definitely not the place to be in. So there was a huge uproar in the community saying, oh, she can't get into hotels. My father fought it out for me. And that's how I got enrolled into the hotel school. And that's where my life actually began, because that was the first time I took matters into my own hands. That was the first time I broke the glass ceiling from, in terms of, getting out of the community guardrails and doing
Mm.
something for myself. And then that became a habit for me. um, I went on to do hotels. I went on to marry a man from another religion, because I wanted to spend my time with him. As we speak, I still have three cysts slash tumors in my brain. I live with it. The doctors were unable to take it out. And whilst it has a few repercussions, these are things that I live with. But I just feel I was God's special child, because had that incident not happened in my life at the age of 18, I don't think I would have had the energy or the aspiration to go and make a difference in my little ways in the society.
Wow, Ranju, you certainly are making a difference, and of course, it's a very powerful and profound story. And thank you for sharing it with us. And we're so glad that those healthcare days are behind you, and only wish you all the happiness going forward. Ranju, I think the part about talking to someone like you is you answer so many of my following questions and start new ones as well. So let's start with, of course, the most profound thing you mentioned on the healthcare thing. Of course, when you're 18 or 19, or as young as that, most individuals are not mature enough, because you're evolving as a young adult and your late teenage years, and to understand that. And we you heard that at a time when healthcare in India, of course, as much as you had good doctors, healthcare in India, of course, with evolution of time, has only gotten better, but back then wouldn't have been as good. Your parents, of course, wouldn't know what to do at that point. And just being told that, how do you have the mental health, not just you, your parents, because this is not just about doctors and the best treatment. It's also about your own mental fortitude to overcome such a challenge. So, not to ever take you back to those despondent days, but it's so inspiring that, for other people hearing this, they need to know what are, what you went through, if at all there's the elixir, what it was.
So, Akshobh, the first thing was that initially my parents did not share with me how serious my case is. So, I was in this beautiful land where I just thought I'm going to get better. I was eyeing all the good looking doctors around me. It's that age, 18, 19, where you just, that's your world, right? I did not realize that I was that close to the edge. It was one particular day in the hospital. It was around 2:30 in the morning, where two doctors were discussing my case, and they thought I was sedated, but I had actually wafted out of the sedation, and I was slightly conscious, and they kept saying, oh, it's such a shame that bed number 21 will not make it. Such a young life. Even if she makes it, then she'll have these issues to live with and stuff like that. And because I had been sedated for quite some time before that, as a course of the treatment,
Mm.
I heard this and I said, oh, how sad for bed number 21. And then after a minute or so, I said, what's my bed number? I don't know what my bed number is. And I was strapped with IVs and blood transfusion and stuff like that. And I remember turning my head and looking, and just behind my bed was bed number 21. And that was the first night I actually realized that I might not make it. And I
Mm.
remember having a good solid cry in the morning when my mom had come to see me. And that is the day I prayed to God for the first time, saying, please let me live. I really want to live. And that's why I always advocate, apart from advocacy of gender diversity, equity, and all of that, I always advocate good health to everybody, because that's prime. I know how it is to lose it, and once you've lost it, it's very difficult to come back. I was young, hence it's easy for me to live life the way I do today. But I have really taken health in my hands. I'm a marathon runner today, and all of those 105 kilos have gone. I'm the ideal weight for my height, and that can happen only with grit and determination. The second thing that I promised myself that day was that if I live, I will try to live life on my terms, something that brings me happiness. And that gave me a determination. So every time there was a roadblock for me, whether it was in my personal life or my professional life, I asked myself if I want to do it for myself. And if the answer was yes, I found a way to get over that hurdle. Have I been successful always? No, I've not been. But even if you have tried your best and you've been successful more than you have failed, I think you've been a success story. And for a long time, I would never share this story of mine because I was very emotional about it and it would tear me up all the time. About 10 years back, I shared this story with a colleague, and she inspired me to speak about it because she said, if it inspires other young people going through a trauma like this, your story should go out. And that's the only reason. Now, of course, I'm comfortable speaking with it, speaking about it. So I hope it makes a difference in the world outside.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's the whole idea of these kind of conversations, because it's about these riveting tales of inspiration. And I think when you said bed number 21, it almost just shows not a sense of apathy, but just the fact of a doctor's profession. Because all patients are the same, and there's so many, and it just kind of shed spotlight. Like, you were bed number 21 at that point of time, and just absolutely, I'm so glad you decided to share the story, because I think it's also, apart from what I mentioned about inspiring for other people, but I think it also breaks the stigma and the taboo of, we need to talk about not our health care, our mental health care. Then that's how
Yeah.
we move forward collectively as a society, when we can break the stigma and taboo. And so, Ranju, coming to some of the other points, you mentioned you were God's special child, but you married someone from God's own country, and they they say, for a lot of successful career corporate women, it's all about having a supportive spouse. So you mentioned about your story from a conservative family in Bihar, your husband from Kerala, so your own version of two states, like the
Yes.
movie or the book. So please tell us more on that.
So, I am extremely proud of the fact that we have brought the relationship to where it belongs. Again, hoping to share this story that love and marriage probably is way beyond the constraints of religion, states, caste, and creed. I met my husband in college, and I slowly realized that I was falling in love with him. But I had this sword hanging on my head, my health, because I knew that I had to live with these three cysts slash tumors in my brain all my life. And I did not want to dupe any, my life partner in getting into a relationship with me, not knowing the truth. And I remember there was one, we were all of 21. And there was one day when we confessed our feelings to each other. And then I stopped him and I said, listen, I need to share something with you. And this is my medical history, and I'm going to have to live with it. And it can have repercussions all my life. I'm still living through some repercussions. And I'm okay if you come and say that you don't want to get into this relationship. I'm fine. Please take a couple of days and come back to me. And I remember him saying, I'm not going to take a couple of days. I don't need a couple of minutes. I'm in it for life. And that's how our relationship blossomed. Unfortunately for the world, I am a Hindu Brahmin from Bihar, and he's a Malayali Catholic from Kerala. And there was again a huge uproar in my community. They have a say even the way you want to keep your hair, you know so it's a close knit community with its own advantages, but these are the things that you really need to fight it out. We were ostracized from our family for 17 years after our marriage. But again, the man who stood behind me like a rock was my dad. And the second person who stood behind me like a rock was my brother. The two men in my family, they felt that God had given me a second chance to live, and if I wanted to marry somebody, I should be allowed to. So we got married against probably most people's wishes. But it's turned out beautifully, and as luck would have it, despite a few medical obstacles that I faced because of my history, I have two beautiful kids. My son is 25, my daughter is 23. And I, with my marriage, the only thing I want to show to the world is love knows no boundaries. It is just love that keeps the world ticking. And um, I'm hoping that I've created a family and a story that other people look at and say that yes, this could work out. And he's been extremely proud of my career. He's my biggest cheerleader. We've had to make a lot of compromises on our marital life because of the numerous transfers that I got in my job. It's a joke that my son has done 9 schools and my daughter has done 8 schools. And through it all, I think the only thing I got was support, love, and regard from both my husband and my children. And today they clap the loudest. And I'm sure if they watch this podcast, they'll be clapping harder. So it's been a good story so far.
No, of course, and you mentioned your father and your brother by your side, so he just will touch on a very important theme of not just breaking the glass ceiling, and not just about women. It's about having strong male allies, and that's the whole part that I hope to play. And there's so again, there's I'm enjoying this conversation because there's so much more to unpack in this. And what you said, like when you came out of your health scare. You said you got to work, study hard, and at that moment we've all had those promises with God, like, yeah, if I get through this, I'll do what my
Yeah, I
parents say.
know.
uh, but I also remember a time in India when our career choices were doctor, lawyer, engineer, not exactly hospitality sector. So how did you check in, if I may use that pun, to the hospitality sector? Like, how did that come about? Because, in the aspirational classes of careers, that may not have been the first one when, of that generation. So,
No, you're right. I have an older sister who's a doctor. My father was an engineer. My brother is an engineer. So it was just a natural choice that I would either choose medicine or engineering as my, calling in life. But like I said, when I came out of the hospital, the doctor said that I should choose a profession where the quantum of studies is much lesser because my brain cannot take that amount of pressure. And the second aspect was that I had lost a lot of memory because of all the treatment that had happened. I remember my father, I was always attracted to the glamour industry. It could be, airlines used to be a very glamorous industry
mm,
those days. And I was very attracted to that. Unfortunately, my height, I'm 5 feet 1 at that time, did not really match up to the airline standard. So my father one day said, "Do you want to join hotels?" And we were from a middle class family, did not really go into 5-star hotels, never seen one. But I think I got attracted because I thought it'll be a glamorous job. Little did I know that you have to slog it so much. It's a glamorous job, it's a beautiful job, but there's so much of hard work. And I got in purely because the quantum of academic studies was lesser. But I learned to love it. Today, it's been 31 years, but every day when I come to work, I come to work with a spring in my step. I love my job. I love this industry so, so much. And I've seen a steady increase in women joining hotels now. Though we have a long way to go, the industry average is about 19 to 20%, which is way, way lesser than what it should be. So I'm hoping that if we have stories like this to share, there'll be more and more women. But you are right, there was definitely a huge taboo about women joining this industry. Good women from good families don't join hotels, kind of a scenario, especially in states like Bihar. It still prevails quite a bit in the northern part of India. But
mhm.
we as women have the responsibility to share stories so that more and more women can be inspired and give them the platform to grow.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things you mentioned about hotels was when there's been a paradigm shift in hotels. Like when you walk into a hotel, you don't just see women in superficial roles of just
Yeah,
reception and concierge. And while those are very important, but the
yeah.
Overton window has shifted, because I think it touched on what you said about the glamour industry of, as stewardesses and hotel staff as well. But now the Overton window shifted where you have people like yourselves in leadership roles. So,
I
talking about this
sorry,
conscientious
sorry,
shift.
sorry for interjecting. I have to tell you this. When I'm traveling in aircrafts, then you're sitting beside somebody, right? And then when you take out your laptop and it says Marriott, and the other person's watching, and they'll say, "Oh, you working with Marriott, is it?" And I'll say yes. And the first question is, are you in reception? And I'll say, no, I'm not. Are you in sales? And I'm like, no, I'm not. So what do you look after? Which hotel are you in? And I'll say, I look after Marriott's operations in whole of South Asia. And there's this I can't believe it kind of a look on the person's face, because women are so boxed into reception, sales, in hotels, and we need to move out of that. Today, if I get 10 external emails every day, 8 of them, Akshobh, are marked to a Mr. Alex. They are never marked to Miss Alex, and it infuriates me because they don't even check, because for them it has to be a man at the helm. So very interesting fact here.
No, absolutely, and it reminds me of a time I think when Indira Gandhi, the country's first prime minister, I think was meeting one of her male counterparts, and he had never met a woman prime minister. He's like, "What do I call her?" And she's like, "People call me Mr. Prime Minister," just alluding to the strength back then. But I understand. There's so much to break with the way we are so conditioned with some of these stereotypes, and doesn't make us all necessarily bad people, but I think more important than learning, Ranju, is also unlearning, because you are unlearning come from breaking what you have and giving room to new space. I wanted to ask you again about the point about the hotel brand as well. So you've seen this conscientious shift of women
Yes.
in the hotel business, and you, of course, you're leading the way. Um, Given you're one of the few women leading a major hospitality brand, and most industries are still male dominated at the highest echelons, we've seen women break through in leadership, in tech, in finance, but where are the lacunas still in the hospitality sector?
I think where we lose a lot of women join us. So the good news is that we have almost 35% women at the base level. And with a company like Marriott, where we are such strong advocates of diversity, I think it's just that a lot of women do get attracted to us. And so in the base level, you will find women. The good news is that the more and more you walk the catering colleges in India now, you have a good percentage of anywhere between 30 to 50% women, which is
Hmm.
great. I think where we lose is the middle management, because a woman grows up to get married and have kids. That is when the lure of looking after the children or lure of looking after the family, one, I think a lot of women give up themselves. And second, if they don't give up, there's a lot of family pressure to give up. And hotels, whether we like it or not, is a 24 by 7 job. You can have a VIP arriving at 10 in the night, and you can have a very important breakfast meeting at 8 in the morning. So it's not a fixed timing, right? So there are these shifts, there are working hours, and I think that is where we lose a lot of women. And the women, we have noticed the women who have the perseverance to stick around those middle management years really do very well at the top. I have had my moments too. I mean, I was a wife, I was a mother of 2 kids, I was a daughter, I was a daughter-in-law, and then I had a full-time job. And it's not been easy. There were days
Hmm.
where I didn't even remember when my head hit the pillow. I won't even remember who I was, what was my name, because you were so exhausted. But those, if you do persevere beyond those 8 to 10 years, I think you have a beautiful career waiting for you. And in those 8 to 10 years, I think the only thing I would request women is to ask for help from your friends, from your family. There's so much infrastructural help that you can get in India now. The companies are so focused in getting diversity that they give you a lot of infrastructural help. For example, in a Marriott hotel, every hotel has a creche for young mothers to bring their children, just so that they come back. The issue is that if you lose those first 8 10 years, it's very difficult to get back into the industry, because the younger lot has just taken over by then. So I think it's not the base as much. The one, I think we should educate the society that hoteliering is a great career, and women are safe and respected and can earn well. And the second is to look after our middle management, where women actually expand their families and getting to look at getting married and stuff like that. If we take care of these two levels, I think we should be really good in the next 5 10 15 years.
And that's phenomenal insights there, because I wanted to ask you about the Marriott brand as well. Of course, one of the world's famous brands. It's one of the first names that come to mind when we think of the hospitality sector. But yeah, the Marriott brand and Mr. David Marriott recently had a women's leadership conference, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken. I wanted to
Mhm.
ask you about, yes, the big picture goals here.
Yes.
We see a lot of women-led entrepreneurial conferences, but I wanted to get your perspective on what the Marriott brand and yourself at the helm, and you're such an example of we're trying to achieve through such an initiative, and what are the goals going forward from that.
Oh, we had a beautiful conference. In fact, we have this conference every single year. And the amount of interest and the amount of registrations are literally doubling because we have these wonderful speakers who come and speak about life's lessons. We don't go into statistics. We don't really show what, as a hotel, we want to achieve or a hotel company we want to achieve. We take them away from their day to day work and we talk of inspirational stories. It could be internal and it could be external. We talk of life's lessons. We talk of leadership's lessons. We talk of health. There's a lot of talk about health. In fact, in the one that we had in Bombay, we had the actress Shilpa Shetty come in to
Mm.
talk about health and wellness. We had Ms. Dia Mirza come in. She's an advocate for sustainability and speak about sustainability. We had Sushmita Sen come in, and she's been a trailblazer as far as women empowerment is concerned. Sania Mirza, all of them are pioneers, achievers in their own right. And then to add on that, we had a blast of internal people, internal women who have gone through tough times in life and have emerged leaders or success stories who came and shared their stories. So we just didn't have luminaries coming and spending time with us. We also showcased our own people who have achieved. In fact, in our last women in leadership conference, we had this beautiful panel on diversity. People who have come out on that platform, on the stage, in the conference, which was so heartwarming. And I remember one colleague of mine, he came out on the platform and he said that, it is such a beautiful circle of trust in Marriott that Marriott has developed, that I feel confident to come out here and speak about it. And these are statements that are real life that you can relate to. What's our goal as a company? Our goal definitely is to be the most diversity friendly company, and that does not just mean gender diversity. It means diversity of all kinds, be it skin color, sexuality, anything. And we are slowly working towards that. So that's the bigger goal, and women in leadership conferences are a part of getting to that goal.
I think one of the most important points that we forget with diversity is diversity of thought. And I think it's a lot of the good national security documents we read, because I'm in Washington, D.C., are all about groupthink mentality. Everyone just follow, whereas the whole idea is to try and break away, and more ideas
Yes.
means, there's a collective larger picture. Ranju, you've given us a lot of food for thought. I want to talk about food because heard about your culinary skills. Um, a couple of questions there. I think first is, hotels and leading restaurants are still dominated by male celebrity chefs. You see the Jose Andreas of the world, the Gordon Ramsay, Anthony Bourdain, bless his soul wherever it is. Why do you think there's still a gender parity that's missing, given how archaic and the stereotypes may be of women slaving away in the kitchen for a family, but you still see celebrity chef towards males, and you're leading one of the largest hotel chains, and I'm sure the phenomenal chefs there were males. But why do we not see more women in these roles?
I think the reasoning is probably the same that I spoke about earlier. We lose a lot of women when they get married and they have children, and it's the paucity of time and the paucity of energy, and the culinary. I think the root of the culinary is pretty time consuming. It is one department, and if you are passionate or focused, then it is demanding in terms of time and energy, and I think that's the reason. But you're right. We see a lot of male chefs. Even in hotels, when you go, they are mostly male dominated. But we have started seeing a lot of interest in women also. I must share this very good news that we have a hotel called Westin High Tech City in Hyderabad, and it's an all women hotel. The engineering, the culinary, the security, the IT, every single individual in that, it's a 168 room hotel. We have around 200 women working there. All of them are women, and the entire culinary department is women. So we are taking those baby steps towards that. But you see a lot of patisserie chefs who are women. I think we just need for them to also develop themselves in the hot kitchen and the other areas of the kitchen.
Of course. Apropos of being a chef, you once mentioned that people are the secret sauce, and hospitality is about people. We talk about hospitality and properties, but it's really
Yeah,
about people, right? It's about
yeah.
people, and that's the most important. And as a leader that you've become and evolved in your own leadership journey, how have you kind of adopted? Is it a people first approach? Because that's what your advice to other leadership, your contemporaries and your peers would be like. Have a people's first approach.
So, to be a hotelier, you have to be a people lover. I think that's the main criteria that you look for when you're interviewing. For somebody who's a receptionist, to somebody who works in the spa, to somebody who's a general manager, and somebody who's becoming a VP, you have to be a people lover. There are no shortcuts to it, and you can make out who's a people lover the moment you speak to them. In an interview of a 15-minute or a 45 minutes, there's very little that you know about a person. It is the persona that they want to portray in front of you. But the one inkling we always get as an interviewer is if the person is a people lover. Just the mannerism, just the burst of energy, positivity, talking about people. We are nothing without our teams. Marriott as a company is extremely focused on its associates. We know that the pillar of our success is only our own associates, and that has been, will remain, and will continue to happen in the future. There are no shortcuts to keeping people happy. There are no shortcuts to keeping people engaged. We are a company which is always thinking of ways to do things better. Ever since I've joined the Marriott, I just feel that I have become personally a much better human being, because we just don't look after, oh, what is the associate going to eat in the cafeteria, what's the uniform we are going to give. We have a much larger aspect. We have a theory of spirit to serve the community in Marriott, where every hotel spends a lot of time, energy, and money in doing things for the community that they belong to. This is something that does not have a monetary impact on you, or or something that affects your, it does, a tangible effect on you, but it has a huge effect on you in terms of spirit, your mental wellness, how happy you are, how well you know you how well you gel with the community. So in our company, when we talk of people, it's a 360 view that we take on people. Of course, we look after their salaries, we look after their food, we look after their health, we look after their mental wellness, we look after
Mm.
them. But we also look after the community, which I feel goes a long way in even keeping our own people happier. And that's such a beautiful aspect of Marriott. And there are things that we do professionally, and then you'll be happy to know that you will find a lot of people within Marriott who don't just do community service as a part of a hotel activity, but because it starts affecting you positively in life, you also transcend and start doing it in your personal lives. It's a great community feeling that we get, and it's all to do with people. So we are extremely focused. They continue to be our biggest strength, and we continue to evolve ourselves. Are we doing everything right? Maybe not. There are still things to improve, but we are always looking for feedback and trying to improve not just the quality of work or quality of their life during those 9 hours that they are in the hotels, but also their quality of life outside of those 9 hours when they are working.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's a very important adage because my dad also raised me in the very Maya Angelou school of thought. People never forget how you make them feel. You may forget what they say to you, but you never forget how what they made
Yeah.
you feel, and they'll remember how you make them feel. And you can go back and think of the janitor or the just the high school teacher or the security keeper. They'll remember how you made them feel.
Yes.
Mental health is so important, and you touched on like how people feel, and with seva and community service is so important. But you growing up in India, and mental health was not spoken of back then, and some would say it's still not spoken of even now, and one would
Yes.
argue even in the West it's only just
Yeah.
started being spoken about now. How do you encourage your staff today to take mental health as a priority, and perhaps encourage them to take mental health days? Because in the hospitality sector you cannot be good at service if you're not going to bring your best self to work.
Yes.
It's
Yes. Yeah, I know. And the other day I was flying as a passenger in an aircraft, and I saw a very nice note on the door of the pilot's cabin, the cockpit, which says, "Keep your worries outside this door." And I think it's something that all of us in hotels also practice, because if you're not in the right state of mind, there's no way you would be able to serve our guests very well. It actually dawned upon us, or not dawned upon us, we realized the impact of a situation on mental health and how it affects people is mostly during COVID and after it. And we as a company have tied up with an organization which provides 24 by 7 assistance as far as mental health is concerned. You can pick up the phone, speak to them, take their advice, meet them, and your identity, your situation, your problems will be kept completely confidential, and this is open to all our employees across Marriott hotels. I think we've been doing this for close to half a decade now, and we've it's one of the things that our associates speak very highly about, for having um, an organization at their workplace, though related to the workplace, but something that they don't have to do at home, but something that they can, come out of their house and share and get advice on. I think we take it very, very seriously. Even at work, we have several platforms where you are encouraged to speak either to one person or to several people or to a bunch of people as openly as you can. I think a company grows only if something like this actually happens and you are not judgmental, and that story continues to follow through. And I think as a company, we are extremely respectful, I think, is the word, where we are extremely respectful of what a person is going through, the confidentiality, and the intent is always to assist. The intent is always the betterment, and that really helps. So huge focus on that as well.
Ranju, shifting the conversation a little bit, we spoke about you as a daughter, but I want to talk about your role as a mother and mother to a daughter as well. Obviously, generational gaps from the time you were a kid,
Yes.
to how your parents raised you to now raising kids and grown kids as adult kids, as you mentioned. One is, what were the lessons you learned as a parent that you tried to impart to your kids, and perhaps some of the things that you perhaps didn't get as a child from your parents because they were also a different generation that you are now bringing into the fold. And from what I understand, your daughter's following your footsteps in the hospitality
Yes.
sector. So the apple doesn't fall very
So
far
is
from the
my
tree.
so is my son. So is my
Oh, okay. That's
son.
well,
Yeah.
so the apple clearly doesn't fall far from the tree at all. So you've been an inspiration, I can already see. But I just wanted to touch on your role as a mother, like in terms of inspiring. What lessons are you bringing to
Yeah.
your children?
I think when they were growing up, the one thing I consciously tried to stay away from, to have them behave or lead their lives because the community expected you to do it in that fashion. Choose a career because the community expects you to do it. I faced a lot of that as growing up, and though I had progressive parents who kind of propelled me in the right direction. Not many kids actually get that, and they end up choosing professions or leading their lives because their father said so, or because their uncle said so, or because the community expected them to do that. I encourage my kids to pick up professions that they felt was right for them. They are very outgoing, smart children, and again, people lovers. And I think collectively as a family, we just felt that, and they were drawn towards this profession maybe because I was in it. So was my husband initially. So I think it's just a family of hoteliers. More than the lessons that I've given my daughter, I have been extremely careful in teaching my son. I think if a lot of men are taught well, then the life of the women in this planet will be far, far better. It's probably it was more important for me to raise a son better than the daughter. And I just feel I've given them the freedom of speech, given them the freedom of action, as long as the values that they have grown up with does not get in any way discounted or yeah, I think values are very, very important. So that's how they've grown up. Now with both of them being in the same industry, I never tell them, oh, you need to get to this designation today or that designation tomorrow. I just tell them two things: integrity. Don't ever do something that anybody can point a finger at you and your integrity. And the second is, there is no shortcut to hard work. No matter what your AI says, and no matter what your laptop says, and no matter what the digital age says, hard work has to happen. Don't ever compromise. And I hope that they have learned from that and moved forward. The last but most important thing that I always teach them, that family comes first. You can be any designation, you could be earning whatever salary package, but you need to go back to a family who's happy to celebrate that moment with you. You need your cheerleaders when you are receiving an award or you are receiving a promotion letter, or even when you're going to work, you need those cheerleaders around you, because that's the essence of life. A lot of
Mm.
us, when we're working, we forget that we are not the designation that uh, the person's much bigger than the designation you carry. Humility is very, very important no matter where you climb. I read this very interesting quote which said, be nice to the people when you're climbing up the ladder, because you will meet them on your way down as well, right? And so true. So I've taught them to be humble. I've taught them to be very, very high on integrity, hard work. I hope things turn out well.
No, absolutely. I think it's it's a they always say like you have to understand that you may be replaceable at work but not replaceable at home. So I think that
Absolutely.
value of family and values is so sacrosanct. I just wanted to touch on that a little more. You mentioned that people ask you, are you inspiring your daughter? And you said, no, no, my goal is to inspire my son, and I think to give his wife and inspire her to follow her dreams. This is also a larger message, as I mentioned, of what can male allies do, because the glass ceiling has been put in by a lot of the other gender. So it's not just behooves on women to break that. You need throughout history, throughout any movement to achieve parity, it requires a more powerful, dominant force to help the other person. So not just so. What can male allies do to kind of come on board and be a partner in this process?
My life has been a classic case of partnership with the men in my life. They have been my biggest support system, the wind beneath my wings, whether it has been my dad, uh, my husband, or my son. Whenever I'm invited to women conferences, empowerment, my idea has never been to bash the men in my life, because they have been my biggest support and biggest allies. What really works is a partnership. What really works is a mindset of, may the best person win. It can be a man, it can be a woman, but may the best person win. When I speak at women conferences, I genuinely request the women to not use their gender card as and when it is convenient for them. If you
Mm,
want equality, if you want equity, then everything has to speak and scream equality and equity. Then you cannot say, oh, I want to use my gender card in a bus where there are seats for women, but I want the same salary as the men at work. It can't be. I want to use stuff as it as an advantage to me all the time.
Mm.
I think the men just need to support the women and give them the space to be the individuals that they are, not a woman, not a man. Just give them the space to be an individual. Don't box them up. And certain women who have a family, I one day a young woman came and asked me this question, and she said, it's very easy for you to, now that you've achieved ABC, it's very easy for you to sit on a dais and speak about this, but what about us, who I've been married 6 months, I have in-laws and I have a community and I have a family, how do I do that? I think it is not something that happens overnight. It is something that you just continue to chip away. You cannot convince a person to look at you differently or give you the space differently overnight or in a day. It has to be something that you keep chipping away and show your worth, right? I think the men should give us, one, the space to be individuals, treat us as individuals, and support. A lot of women need that support in their family. A lot of women need the support in front of their in-laws, and that's what a man can do. and
Correct.
and similarly for women, it's not a one-way street. The woman also has to be supporting a man. I mean, I have seen women in my life, and loads of them, who work, they have a full-time job and go back and cook and look after the kids. Why? Why can't the man also do that? I
Mm.
have I have colleagues whose husbands are not working, have lost their jobs for whatever reason. She is the primary earner of the family, and yet she goes back and does all the household chores. Why? Why can't the man do it when she's at work? So I think it we just need to deal with this entire thing as a partnership, as allies, and it has to start from here. The physical part will come later, the mental part, and that is where women raising strong men, boys, and women raising extremely strong girls, both are equally important. But if you want
Absolutely.
boys as allies or men as allies, then the seasoning has to start from their childhood. They can't get married one day in a very patriarchal society and say, now I'm going to give my wife all the the freedom. The parents are never going to take it. The society is never going to take it. So it's a gradual process. India is slowly, you can see a huge shift, at least in the cities,
Mm.
especially where there are double income families. So I'm hoping that it'll slowly spread.
The seasoning has to start early. That's the chef's
Yes.
words of advice, absolutely. And always trust the chef. I wanted to ask you, like a lot of young people, and when I'm starting off as well, and I'd like to still try to count myself as young. Hopefully, I
Yeah.
can play that card. May seem rudderless because they don't get the right mentorship. So, what would your words of advice be for young people looking for mentors? It's in some ways it's intimidating for people to come
Yeah.
and approach senior people, and also your words of advice for your peers and your
Yeah.
contemporaries in leadership roles on mentoring the next
Yeah.
generation.
I think the first thing is to feel free to seek a mentor. Seeking a mentor is not a sign of weakness in any manner. You know, um, in India, if you asked for a life coach 10 years back, people would say, oh, I think they have a psychological issue. That's why they're
Mm.
looking for a life coach. But I know how beautifully a life coach can influence, the right life coach can influence your life. I think the first thing is not to be shy and not to be fearful of asking or seeking a mentor. The second thing, in your professional lives, if you're seeking a mentor, don't ever just go to the highest person in the ladder, right, and ask for mentorship, because that person's level and your level is has so much of disparity
Yeah.
that you will never get your right answers. Go to somebody that you have admired. Go to somebody that you would want to be like 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line, and seek mentorship. And the third thing is try and be a mentor, because when you are a mentor to somebody lower in the food chain to you, you know what that other person, you also realize in the process what the other person's looking for, and maybe that is something that you are looking for too. And mentorship does not mean one mentor for a period of time or for life. You can learn different things for different people. Again, one question get asked all the time: who's your idol? I don't have a single idol. I
Mm.
pick up, I'm very greedy, I'm very selfish. I try and pick up one good, one good aspect from somebody, second good aspect from somebody else. I want to get everything together, right? So please, widen your horizon. Don't just go to one person, and you could have different mentors at different stages of life, because you are going through a transformation yourself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think this touches into something else which is profound, right? In the sense that not everyone is fortunate to have Ranju Alex as a boss. So you hear a lot about unhealthy leadership across workplaces.
Yes.
What's your advice to young people on being able to swim against the tide? Because for some people, it's not easy just to get up and leave, right? There's mortgage, there's financial commitments, all of that. How can young people manage with difficult leadership?
I think speaking up helps. If not solving the problem there and then, it makes the boss or the superior realize that this person has a voice. And that itself is a deterrent. But if you keep quiet and just keep taking the toxicity, then there will be more toxicity that will be loaded onto you. I remember as a very young assistant manager at, I think, 24 or 25, I did not like the way I was spoken to by my boss. And I was very young, and there were not too many jobs in the hotel industry. I knew that if I spoke back or retorted, I could have lost my job as well. But I also knew that if I walk away from that space being spoken to in that fashion, I will never be able to respect myself, because I didn't stand up for myself. And I
Mm,
remember turning around and very respectfully, you don't have to shout, scream, or use disrespectful words or abuse. I very respectfully told her, I said, I do not wish to be spoken with in this fashion. So once you've calmed down, please call me and we'll have this conversation. Believe me, my legs were shaking when I said this, because I was so nervous and I was so afraid of the outcome. But it actually changed things. And that is the day I realized that if you don't speak up, things will not change. You have to speak up for yourself. Only then will someone speak up for you.
mm,
So I think
absolutely.
I think I think that is one thing. Second is pick your battles. You don't have to go to the war front and fight all the battles. Pick your battles. Something that's going to make a major change, something which actually hits on your value system. These are stuff that you want to pick battles on. Don't pick battles on, oh, the water is lukewarm, why isn't it cold? And you need to pick those
That will dilute the argument.
yeah, completely. So pick your own bottles. The third, before you get into confronting somebody or speaking for yourself, get your facts right. Because
Mm,
if those facts are not going to be right, if your own work is not right, if you don't come from a place of good performance, then the situation is going to be very, very weak for you. And
mm,
be prepared to walk out not winning all the battles. It's okay not to win all the battles. You are not here to win all the battles. As long as you have made a point, you can be rest assured that the point has been heard. Then I think you're in a good space. Last, and this is so important, I tell my kids this, I tell all the young managers this: you have a choice. There's never a time in your life where you don't have a choice. That choice has to be exercised. The pros, cons, weightage is all up to you, but you always have a choice. When I hear people say I had no choice, I always smile, because there's never a situation in life where you don't have a choice. So
mm.
exercise that choice, but exercise it with caution.
You know, that's That's a very valuable lesson how young people in a hierarchical corporate setup can finally find their voice. As I mentioned, learning is important, but what I found is unlearning is even more important too.
Yes.
What's your word advice again for again more leadership to delegate and trust the next generation more? Because letting go of the reins is never easy. We've seen that with our parents, or what do you know? Because there's a sense of infantilizing the next generation, but there's also important to unlearn that because the next generation also knows things that you don't. In case in point, technology, because times are different. So how would you encourage your own peers, in other leadership organizations, or perhaps even at Marriott, to trust the next generation a little more? Because that also requires a lot of humility to be able to do so.
Yes, I know, and I think as a leader, you're doing yourself a lot of harm if you don't trust the next generation, and you are insecure about them. Either ways, I don't think that should be done at any point of time. And you can get to a point like that if you are superlative in what you do. So
Mm,
again, I come back to individuality. We talk about gender, we talk about diversity, but at the end of the day, I think what we should celebrate is individuality. And every individual gets their own skill sets, gets their own strengths and weaknesses. It is, if we want to work as a team, if we want to work as a leader, then I think that needs to be respected above everything else, above being a man or a woman, being dark skinned, being fair skinned, everything. It's the individuality of that person that actually fructifies a teamwork or a leader's position or your success in both a corporate as well as a family unit. So I think that's most important. I completely agree with you that one has to unlearn, but that's the situation with every generation. Did we think that everything that our parents told us were right? No. Even today when I look back, I still argue with my mom. Oh, I think we could have done this better. You should have put me in this class and
mm,
you should have done that. Not, our parents didn't do everything right, we are not doing everything right, the next generation is not doing everything right. But I think we just need to pick up. Our value system thankfully never changes, right?
yeah,
Because that depends a lot. Integrity is integrity, whether you are digitally savvy or not savvy. Integrity is integrity. uh, uh, Respecting people never changes, it's never out of fashion, it'll always be in vogue. So as long as your value system is not compromised upon, I think these little nuances of generational divisions can be worked upon.
yeah, no, absolutely, and I think there was a song back when I was growing up by an Australian band called Savage Garden, and the song was Affirmation, and the line says, "I believe your parents did the best job they knew how to do," because people
Yes,
forget that there are only known knowns and known unknowns. Every time I ask my dad, "Why did you do this?" But I realized I did not know what it was like to be a young gentleman in this 1970s
I
socialist
know.
India, right? Like,
I know.
it's very important to understand that people are a product of the time they are in. So they only know what they know at that
True,
point in time.
true.
And I
And
think that's what.
I think what's important at any point of time is to sieve the top and see the intent.
Mm,
There are many times as leaders, as bosses, we have somebody we've given a job to, and the job's not done. And the first instinct is to get upset, right? But
mm,
I think if you calm down, sieve it through, and it's difficult. It's not as easy as it sounds. I can sound a little preachy just now, but it's not as easy. When you sieve the surface or you remove the surface and you see that the intent was there, I think that also should be celebrated.
yeah, absolutely. And my final question, and I kept you, and you've been very generous with your time. You mentioned to keep the perseverance going, and you'll see the light at the end of the tunnel. Is
Yes.
that your advice for posterity?
Yes, absolutely. And no shortcuts to hard work.
Ranju Alex, I noticed the mark. We literally ended at 1 hour mark and 11 seconds. I hope I don't get charged for late checkout, to use the hotel fund. But thank you so much. This conversation has been absolutely riveting. And, I think we've got to know Ranju Alex a little bit more. And, I think we got to keep having you back on, and perhaps a spin-off series where we'll invite your spouse on, because a spin-off of this series, where we could have more success stories. Ranju
Wonderful.
Alex, thank you for being on The Power of She.
Thank you. So, so honored and so happy. Thank you.